It's Monday, the 4th of August. Welcome to the PDB Afternoon Bulletin. I'm Mike Baker, your eyes and ears on the world stage. All right, let's get briefed. First up, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is facing renewed pressure at home to end the war in Gaza. Hundreds of former senior security officials, including retired IDF chiefs of staff and Mossad directors, are now demanding an end to the conflict and appealing to President Trump to intercede, warning that Israel is, quote, on the precipice of defeat. Later in the show, just 2 days after having their independence reinstated, Ukraine's anti-corruption agencies have uncovered a major corruption scheme involving funds meant for the procurement of military equipment. We'll have those details. But first, the PDB Afternoon Spotlight. We'll begin today in Israel, where Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is facing a rare internal uprising over ongoing military operations in Gaza. And notably, well, the outcry isn't coming from a political faction, although it may have political motivations, but directly from high-ranking former security officials once charged with defending Israel at home and abroad. On Monday, nearly 600 retired Israeli security officials, including retired IDF chiefs of staff, former intelligence chiefs, former directors of Shin Bet and Mossad, and police commissioners, published an open letter urging President Trump to pressure Israel to end the war in Gaza, just as Netanyahu considers expanding operations against Hamas. The former officials argued that the war could have ended more than a year ago with a, quote, sufficient operational achievement, but is instead being dragged out for what they claim are political purposes. They called on Trump to help steer Netanyahu towards securing a permanent ceasefire and comprehensive hostage deal, even if it means making some difficult concessions. In the letter to Trump, the officials said, quote, it is our professional judgment that Hamas no longer poses a strategic threat to Israel. Your credibility with the vast majority of Israelis augments your ability to steer Prime Minister Netanyahu and his government in the right direction, end the war, return the hostages, stop the suffering, end quote. A group of the most senior signatories of the letter also released a joint video arguing that Jerusalem's principal military objectives have long since been achieved. By continuing the war, they say, Netanyahu is eroding Israel's standing in the world and therefore risking the country's, quote, security and identity, according to a report from the Times of Israel. The video notes that the former security chiefs have all operated in the inner circles of Israeli government and attended the most sensitive decision-making processes, adding, quote, together they have more than 1,000 years' experience in national security and diplomacy, end quote. Now, the internal coalition includes former IDF Chief of Staff and Prime Minister Ehud Barak, former Chiefs of Staff Moshe Ya'alon and Dan Halutz, as well as ex-Shin Bet directors, who said they have a duty to, quote, stand up and say what we need to say. Now, a former head of Shin Bet said, quote, this war started as a just war. It was a defensive war. But once we achieved all its military objectives, once we achieved a brilliant military victory against all our enemies, this war stopped being a just war. It is leading the state of Israel to the loss of its security and identity, end quote. A former Mossad director put it more bluntly, warning, quote, we are on the precipice of defeat. Regarding the humanitarian crisis in Gaza that has intensified global criticism of Israel in recent weeks, he added, quote, what the world sees today is of our own creation. We are hiding behind a lie that we wrought. This lie was sold to the Israeli public, and the world has long since understood that it doesn't reflect the real picture, end quote. One former IDF chief of staff, who also previously served as Netanyahu's Minister of Defense, spoke in similarly harsh terms, saying, quote, right now, we have a government that the messianic zealots have pulled in a certain irrational direction. A former Shin Bet director concurred. He noted that the faction of leadership that wants to expand military operations are a minority, but said the problem is, quote, the minority controls the policy. He also argued that those who think Israel can, quote, reach every terrorist and every pit and every weapon and at the same time bring our hostages home are living in a fantasy. The security officials implored those currently in office to take a firm stance against the war, saying it is their, quote, duty to stand up to the prime minister and make their case regarding what they see as the futility of the conflict. And this isn't the first time that former senior members of Israel's security establishment have rebuked Netanyahu. Back in April, a group of 1,000 current and former Israeli Air Force reservists signed an open letter calling for an immediate end to the war, accusing Netanyahu's government of putting the lives of hostages at risk and pursuing continued conflict for, quote, political and personal interests. They were subsequently joined by some 1,600 former IDF paratroopers and infantry soldiers, as well as roughly 250 former Mossad operatives, including 3 ex-chiefs. But Netanyahu is caught in a difficult, to say the least, position. As we discussed earlier on the PDB, Hamas issued a statement over the weekend saying that they will not disarm unless a fully independent Palestinian state with Jerusalem as its capital is established. The extreme demand has essentially shut down any hopes for a breakthrough in ceasefire negotiations, leaving Netanyahu with few options outside of continued military operations. Not to mention that when you're not actually in a position of responsibility, well, it's easy to pontificate about what should be done. Up next, Ukraine's anti-corruption agencies uncover a major corruption scheme involving funds meant for the procurement of military equipment. I'll be right back. Hey, Mike Baker here with a very solid fashion tip because, I am somewhat known for my keen sense of fashion. I want to tell you about a great clothing company, and it's called True Classic. Now, with True Classic, it's never just about fit or fabric, although they get those right all the time. It's also about helping guys show up with confidence and purpose every day. Their clothes fit where they should, they feel incredible, and they don't cost a fortune. So you get that tailored look without blowing the budget. True Classic's mission is uplifting men in their day-to-day lives, giving back to underserved communities, and doing it all without taking themselves too seriously. And in today's world, that's refreshing. When you throw on True Classic clothing, you can feel the difference. It's tailored where you want it, relaxed where you need it. There's no bunching, and nobody wants bunching. There's no stiff fabric. You don't need that. There's no BS. Just a clean, effortless fit that actually works for real life. Forget overpriced designer brands and skip the cheap throwaway stuff. True Classic is built for comfort, built to last, and built to give back. You can find them at Target, at Costco, or just visit trueclassic.com/PDB. Hey, Mike Baker here. Let me take just a moment of your time to talk about protecting your hard-earned assets. Now, you've probably noticed a little turmoil out there in the economy, right? I mean, trade wars, a U.S. Federal Reserve that seems, a bit at odds with the White House, uncertainty over employment numbers, a volatile stock market. You probably get the picture. At times like these, it's important to think about your assets and how to protect them. And one way to do that is through diversification. And I'm here to suggest that you consider diversifying with gold from the Birch Gold Group. Look, for decades, gold has been viewed as a safe haven in times of economic stagnation and global uncertainty and high inflation. And Birch Gold makes it incredibly easy for you to diversify some of your savings into gold. If you have an IRA or an old 401k, you can convert that into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold. Or, like a lot of folks, you can just buy gold and store it safely at home. First, get yourself educated. Birch Gold will send you a free information kit on gold. Just text PDB to the number 989-898. Again, text PDB to 989-898. Consider diversifying a portion of your savings into gold. Again, text PDB to the number 989-898. Welcome back to the Afternoon Bulletin. In the latest sign that Ukraine's corruption problem is far from solved, investigators say they've uncovered a massive scheme designed to siphon off millions in defense funds just days after President Zelensky signed a bill meant to shore up the country's anti-corruption efforts. Now, in a joint statement Saturday, the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine, or referred to by its acronym NABU, and the Special Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office, also, it has an acronym too, and that's SAPO, announced what they described as a, quote, large-scale corruption scheme involving rigged military procurement contracts and inflated pricing on defense equipment. I'm shocked there, including drones. According to the agencies, the operation relied on rigged tenders and kickbacks that allowed participants to skim roughly 30% of the contract value. It's unclear on the total amount of funds that have been siphoned off. Among those implicated are sitting members of parliament, regional officials, a senior National Guard officer, and an executive at a defense contracting firm. Though none were named in the statement, the implication was clear. This went all the way towards the top. Zelensky wasted no time condemning the scheme as, quote, absolutely immoral in a Telegram post. He pledged to shake up the military logistics leadership, vowing that only, quote, combat officers would now hold key posts. He made clear that, quote, there can be only zero tolerance for corruption, calling for swift and fair verdicts. But the timing of the scheme, the discovery of it, has raised some eyebrows. The bombshell dropped just 2 days after Zelensky signed legislation reversing a controversial law from last month that would have handed control of the NABU and the SAPO to Ukraine's newly appointed prosecutor general, handpicked by Zelensky himself and a known presidential loyalist. That earlier measure, rushed through Parliament with little debate, had triggered the largest anti-government protests since Russia's full-scale invasion back in February of 2022. The bill also provoked a stern warning from Brussels that Ukrainians' candidacy for EU membership could be at risk if post-Maidan anti-corruption reforms were unraveled. As we previously discussed here on the PDB, Zelensky initially defended the oversight changes as necessary to, quote, remove Russian influence and streamline corruption investigations. However, the government, did not provide evidence of Kremlin infiltration. The country's civil society watchdogs warned instead that the move would kneecap the very agencies created to root out the graft. Saturday's news appears to be something of a turning point. As for the thousands who took to the streets last month in protest of the oversight, it serves as a vindication of their demands and protests. And that, my friends, is the PDB Afternoon Bulletin for Monday, the 4th of August. Now, if you have any questions or comments, and I hope you do, please reach out to me at pdb@thefirsttv.com. And, of course, as was mentioned in today's White House briefing, or maybe that wasn't the case, to listen to the show ad-free, just become a premium member of the President's Daily Brief by visiting pdbpremium.com. I'm Mike Baker, and I'll be back tomorrow. Until then, stay informed, stay safe, stay cool. Hey, Mike Baker here. Let me take just a minute of your time, not even a minute, to talk about your personal finances, right? That's very important, your financial health. Let me ask you a question. What if you could delay your next 2 mortgage payments, right? Now, that's intriguing, isn't it? Think about that. Putting those 2 payments in your pocket and finally getting a little breathing room. Well, it's possible when you call American Financing today. Look, if you're feeling stretched by everyday expenses, and you know what I'm talking about, right? Grocery bills, gas bills, auto bills, utility bills, a variety of bills piling up, well, you're not alone. And many Americans are actually putting a lot of those expenses on their credit cards, and for many of them, they don't really see a way out. American Financing can show you how to use your home's equity to pay off that debt. So give American Financing a call today to see what your options are. Their salary-based mortgage consultants are helping homeowners just like you restructure their loans and consolidate debt, all without upfront fees, and that's very important. And their customers are saving, on average, about $800 a month. Now, I'm not a rocket scientist, but I think that's something like a $10,000 raise. It's fast, it's simple, and it could save your budget. Call now, 866-885-1881. That's 866-885-1881. Or just visit AmericanFinancing.net/PDB.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and leave a comment, a really positive, nice, and kind comment. That would be appreciated. And if you're not already subscribed to our channel, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our daily updates.